Well, welcome to this presentation on the 5 things you need to know about drones in construction. My name is Grant Hagan, and I'm excited that you guys would join in with us here to learn a little bit more about this technology and how it's impacting our industry. We're excited to have a chance to show you a little bit about how we've been using them here at the Beck Group and how you guys can take some of these examples back to your own companies or some of your workflows that you are working in. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in and get started. So my name is Grant Hagan. Like I mentioned, I'm a VDC manager here at the Beck Group. I've been here for about 7 years, 4 of which have been working within our virtual building group team. And we'll share a little bit about kind of how that team works within our company and kind of organizational structure. But excited to have a chance to talk to you guys more about this subject today, and hopefully the goal will be to take some stuff away that you could go back and start to implement at your own companies. And so a little agenda items for what we're going to kind of go over here today is give you guys a little bit of background about us as a company and how that kind of plays into using this technology and really the different parts and areas of our company that are impacted by using it, and then specifically our team and how we fit into the kind of organizational structure to allow technology to really be used and capitalized on. So once we get through that, we'll kind of talk a little bit about just the background of how we've got into this technology really briefly, just to kind of give you some background and context into our program. And then we'll hop into the 5 specific things that you probably came here wanting to know about, of just what to know about this technology in our industry specifically. And so at the end, I have some contact information. If you have any questions and are interested in following up, would encourage you to do that, to reach out and hopefully collaborate on any questions you might have. So a little bit about the Beck Group specifically. We're a little bit different from a traditional construction firm or architecture firm. We actually have both on staff. We have designers and builders, and so we try to take an approach with a lot of our projects to be an integrated company. And really what that means is that we have a desire to do both the design and construction for the clients that we get to serve. And so we are really fortunate to do that in different avenues and different market sectors. And so we are also a group within the Beck Group is this virtual building group, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but a little different from a typical construction company or a typical architecture company. We have about 700 employees on staff that again are both architecture and construction background and serve both markets and do third-party architecture and third-party construction. But our hope would be to be able to do both of those for a client. And so a little bit about just kind of where we're at landscape-wise in kind of the country. We're in Dallas-Fort Worth, which is where I'm at here today. And then you can see kind of some of our other regional markets as well. So Dallas-Fort Worth has been home for us. We've been here for over 100 years. We started as a construction company kind of in our company's history, but then merged with an architecture firm here in '99. And so that's kind of where some of our background comes into play in just our company culture. And so if you haven't been to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this is just a kind of a fun picture of our skyline here. We've been really fortunate to just have a really big impact on this city and the growth really in the last 100 years that we've been a company. And so you can see here just the buildings in blue that we've had a chance to either design or build and be a part of. And so it's just fun. If you haven't been to the Dallas area, I would encourage you to come. It's a fun place. We've been really fortunate to serve a lot of the clients here in the area and build some really great relationships. So Dallas is booming right now. It's been a fun market to be a part of and serve. And so if you haven't come, I would encourage you to make a trip out here to come check it out. So a little bit about our team specifically, because we get asked this question a lot of just how does this kind of work and where do workflow and technology kind of all meet within our company structure. And so what you're looking at is kind of a really high level overview of our org chart within kind of our team, which would be the virtual building group. And so we're kind of split up into 4 different sub-teams that interact and do different things specifically in their own kind of sub-teams. And so Beck's vision as a company is really to revolutionize the industry and create the future. And we really feel like we're taking that approach in doing the integrated process of the architecture and construction. And so that really bleeds over into our team's vision, which is really being the bridge that allows our teams to be aligned and really efficient and produce high quality work. And really to ultimately take pride in what they do. We feel really fortunate to be able to impact our staff in a pretty unique way. to help serve them and be more efficient in what they do, and really have higher quality products in the back end with the use of technology workflows that they are impacted by. And so the team that I serve on specifically would be the services team, and I'll talk a little bit more about what our team does within that role. But at a high level overview, these are kind of some of the things that we have had a chance to work on. And you can kind of see the different sub-teams and the different parts and pieces that they get to interact with on a daily basis. And so these are some of just the most brightest people in the industry. It's been really fun to work more with them and really learn from them and continue to share that same vision of really producing high-performing teams and really projects that are give our staff the ability to just work more efficient and have more fun at what they're doing in their roles. And so a lot of times we get asked kind of where our team landscape-wise is spread out between those different regional offices, and so this is just a quick synopsis of really where some of our staff kind of resides to be able to work in these different workflows and really serve our staff in these kind of four main offices as well. And so our team specifically within the services team does a little bit of everything. It's kind of hard to accurately describe all the things and parts and pieces that we get to touch, but as it relates to just reality capture and field verification, drones kind of fits up underneath that within our company. And so that's really where this has started and really seen the most impact to be able to help our company specifically within this kind of sub-team underneath the virtual building group. And so we feel really fortunate to be able to impact both of these different parts of the company with design and construction. This is just a quick graphic that kind of shows our VDC roadmap of the different parts and areas that our team really tries to impact and touch along the way, all the way from design to construction. And so as you can imagine, getting involved in the design process as soon as possible with our team has been something that our staff has been really excited about, especially as we hand off that information into the construction team so that they can go and take that information that was produced on the front end. And so that's just a little bit about just kind of the roadmap and really parts of a project that our team gets to interact with and work within. And so another question we get asked quite often as it relates to drones specifically is really just what our team and department looks like, or really the operations in general. And so these are just some numbers that kind of reflect that really since we've been doing this for a while, back since 2014. And so these numbers are really always just fun to kind of have as a gauge to kind of see how we've been growing. And I think the numbers that are the most exciting to see continue to grow is that Part 107 pilots, which we'll talk about a little bit more in depth here in this presentation, which is really just the involvement from other people outside of our team that have taken on a desire to want to know more about this and implement it on their job site level specifically. So these are just really good numbers to kind of get a gauge of kind of where we're at. We are certainly not the biggest operation in the construction industry specifically. We've kind of tailored it to our size and our needs, but this can just kind of help give you an idea of really how many projects that we've done or really had a chance to work on, the pilots, the equipment. Those are always just questions that we get asked pretty frequently. And so with that being said, I want to dive in really to what you probably came to hear more about, which are those 5 things that we think that are important for you to know if you're considering using this technology, if you're already using it, things that you could reconsider or just be reminded of. And so the first one that we really wanted to talk about, if you're new to this topic or new to this technology, is really the fact that these actually have been around for quite some time. We have a good little timeline graph that was provided from Very Drone blog that kind of talks about the iterations of the different equipment that has kind of come through our industry, starting back all the way in October of 2013. So almost about 5 years ago to this month was really one of the first out-of-the-box solutions that we got really excited about using, which was the Phantom 2 Vision. And so all of these products that you see here are created from a manufacturer called DJI. They're quite the industry leader within the area of drone manufacturing, and so we were really excited to see a unit that came out in that October timeframe that was really an out-of-the-box solution. The thing that we were really interested about is that we aren't necessarily the hobbyists that do some of this stuff at home or build them on the side, but we were really looking for a solution that we could pull out of the box and really start using right away. And so this unit in particular was one of those first units that we didn't have to mount a GoPro to or manufacture something specifically on our own, but we could really just pull it out of the box, charge the batteries, and really get going with what we needed to use it for. And so that was a really exciting time for us. We purchased that unit that you see there from a hobby store, honestly, and it was one that we were excited to really test and see what its capabilities were, and really kickstarted a lot of this new discovery into utilizing the technology specifically. So you can see obviously all the iterations that have come since then, and the unit on the far right there, the Phantom 4, is still a unit that we use today. It's a great unit that has continued to prove valuable for us. But really just the first kind of big takeaway is that these actually have been around for quite some time. And so as you guys look as you look more into this and start to understand kind of where it's come from, I think history can define the future in a sense of just how long things have been around, and really how impactful they can be moving forward, just depending on how long they've been around. And so that's just one thing to kind of consider as you're thinking about this. And so the second point here is really just that there are regulations and things that you need to consider. And so this isn't a presentation specifically diving into all those things in depth. That could be a whole host of multiple presentations over multiple different topics. But really what we wanted to kind of walk through was just really some of the basics. And so we talked about this a little bit earlier about this kind of Part 107 pilot, and what does that mean? Well, really what that means is really it's just a certificate that you would get to be able to use these units in a commercial entity or to further a business. And so really what that looks like is going and taking a 60-question proctored exam in a FAA regulated testing center, and the kind of study time to practice and get through a lot of that content to take that certification test could be anywhere from 6 hours to 10 hours to 15 hours, just depending on how fast you or slow you want to go through the content. And so this was a really monumentous time in the commercial drone space, which just allowed us to get more people to go through and take the certification, and really to be able to be the on-site pilot, or really the on-site liaison, to be able to operate and to utilize this technology. And so there's a ton of information out there. You can see some of the bullet points here, but I would encourage you to do some investigation on your own of what your company's needs might be, whether that's having internal pilots that you would want to send to go and take this certification exam, or if you'd want to hire an outside company that has already gone through and started to do some of those different things. And so the second part to really consider within this regulation concept is really some of the Part 107 rules, specifically around those kind of operations when you take that exam. And so these are, by all means, quite a few, or I'm sorry, a few of them, not all of them, in an exhaustive list, but I put a link here, and you can Google as well, just the Part 107 summary PDF. That PDF really goes into depth on all the different things that you'll have to consider as you continue to utilize this technology within that Part 107 certificate. And so really the two that I just wanted to highlight here is really that second bullet point, which is really the altitude or ceiling that we can operate these to, which is 400 feet, which really for us in our commercial operations doesn't prohibit a lot of different things that we desire to do. A lot of the projects that we build are well underneath that, unless you're in a kind of a high-rise situation, which kind of has some differences that you can work through with some language in the Part 107 guidelines. And so the 400-foot ceiling is really not something that prohibits us, but really just more of a point to talk about. And that ceiling changes as you get closer and closer to airports, which leads to kind of the fifth point here on this as well, which is really just the process for getting permission to operate in different airspaces. And so the FAA does see these as aircraft that are operating in national airspace. And so with that, having the ability to communicate with ATC, which would be air traffic control, there's a certain process that you would need to go through to be able to operate in some of those different airspaces. And so luckily, there is a process now that has come out called LANCE, which stands for Low Altitude Authorization Notification Center. And so what that really does is takes the process of filling out a waiver or a flight that you were planning on doing in a certain airspace and pushes that into a database that the air traffic control can see. And so operating airspace is always just something to consider, as I'm sure many of you probably reside in cities that have airports. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have two that are pretty major for us that are really right in the middle of the city, which just require different things that we need to consider as we go about operating and choosing to use these units. And so like I said, more information on this can be found in the Part 107 summary PDF. It's a great document, but we really just wanted to focus on kind of a few highlights. We may have more presentations in the future that hit on more of these regulations and how they affect us as a company to kind of consider and think through. But those are just a few that we wanted to highlight here. And so the third point that we're going to move into is really just this idea of safety and how smart these tools have gotten for us. Safety is just one thing that is really the most important thing in our industry that we continue to focus on and make a priority for all of our job sites and really all the people that work on the project sites that we host. And so the fact that these are continuing to get more safe and smarter, something that we're really excited about. And so I just wanted to focus on two technologies that are being built into these for you to be aware of as that technology continues to improve. And one of them is the sense and avoid technology. And so if you've bought a car or been in the market for a car here in the last, probably 2 or 3 different years, sense and avoid technology or sensors on cars are becoming more and more prevalent with either adaptive cruise control or automatic braking techniques. And so what that is really doing is bringing some of that technology into these units as well. And so you can see here kind of those different blue areas or green areas on the far right is really showing the sense and avoid technology at work. And really what it's doing is it's building a kind of environment for the drone to recognize what it might be interacting with in the real world. And so what that does is it really makes the operation of the flight much safer. And so it gives us just a peace of mind when we're flying that we're not going to go and run into different objects that might be on a job site, specifically with crane activity. Cranes are always moving or in the air that we would just need to be aware of, not only just the crane itself, but the boom or different cables that might be going on, which is moving objects. And so to have that sense and avoid technology is really crucial for us that, again, just gives us more of a peace of mind and makes the operation a lot safer. And so the unit on the far right was actually one of the first consumer units that came out with what they call omnidirectional sense and avoid, which really just means that it has sensors on all sides and top and bottom of the unit itself. And so that is something that we were really excited to see come down to a unit of that kind of size and use for things that we were really wanting to do more of, which this unit in particular came out just here in the last few months, and we're excited to see kind of the applications as it relates to different inspection type workflows, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But sense and avoid technology, it's been something that we've been really excited to see continue to grow and grow within this different market, which is just something that we're really excited to see continue to make our operations a lot safer. Then the second is really just this idea of battery technology that's continued to improve the reliability for these units in particular. And so this unit that you're seeing here specifically is called the M200, which again is from the manufacturer DJI. And this was really one of the first units that came out that had the dual battery redundancy. And so what that really gives us the peace of mind to do is that if one battery fails, to have a backup battery is very, very important. We're trying to eliminate the single sources of failure on these devices, and so batteries being one of those, if not built in with a dual redundancy type application. And so not only does it give us longer flight times, it also builds in that redundancy that just makes the operation safer. And so that's what we're really excited to see more and more of, as you can see here in this graphic. And so those two things hopefully can kind of just give you a glimpse of how this technology has continued to improve and be safer, which is just something that we're really, really passionate and excited to see them having that same kind of vision towards being safe and smart, which is something that we try to do every day on our job site. So the fourth point that we really wanted to talk about here was really, which I'm sure many of you have a lot of questions on, or that we get asked a lot of questions about specifically, is just what is the value that they're providing? How are they helping the teams? What are they doing to enable the teams to be more efficient or effective in what we do? And so I will probably put together another presentation to talk through more of these specifically, but this is really just a high-level overview of some of these different value adds that we've seen. I'm only going to hit on kind of a couple of these, but we'll do a future presentation that'll kind of walk through more of these value adds in more specific detail to kind of walk you through how some of these different deliverables have been used. And so the first one that I wanted to hit on was really just inspections. That's kind of what got us interested in using the technology, and has really continued to be something that we've seen a ton of value in using these for. And so this is just a simple little graph or a simple little chart here that kind of explains the difference between kind of a legacy method of inspection where you might go and rent a man lift, or using kind of a more innovative method with how we're trying to continue to use drones to do inspections. And so there's a lot of numbers on here and different things to kind of think through and consider, but I think the thing that we saw the most value in wasn't necessarily a number or an hours saved, but was really that last one, which was giving us the ability to investigate areas without really having to interrupt different operations. It's kind of a intangible value or an implied value that doesn't have to affect the schedule. And so that was something that we saw as really one of the most value adds to using these for inspection, is we really didn't have to adjust or do anything to our schedule to start to utilize these, but we could go and find our specific needs and really fix those with a little bit more accuracy, rather than kind of doing an investigation and then going back and fixing it. And so we just have a quick little video here to kind of show you what some of those inspections could look like. This is an inspection that we did on a copper dome on a project that we designed and built here in Dallas. And so what you're seeing is just kind of this movement between photos. And so we took these photos from our drone and we then uploaded them into the software platform that allows us to really navigate these photos in a really easy way, and then put these markers down. And so what you can see here is that we were doing an inspection of this roof and found a couple items that we wanted to go and make note of. And so rather than going through that in kind of a Windows Explorer mode, we can navigate through those photos like a Google Street View, and put different icons and different things and points of interest down on that specifically. But what's nice about that is we can put this out into a report to then give us a zoomed in view, which is what you see there, and then kind of that contextual view of where that's at specifically. And so from flight to upload to process to this report was really about a 45-minute process, which, as you can imagine, was something that it did obviously save us a lot of time, which is something that we're always wanting to do. But I think in this case, this was just the safest option, I think is what we were really excited to see and really get a better understanding of how we could do this in a really safe way. And I think the results also yielded just really quality information that we were able to give to the subcontractor specifically, and say, hey, these are the points that we want to make sure when you guys do tie off and when you do put yourself in those positions that you are looking towards fixing, these are the areas we want you to focus on. So again, just a kind of an example of what an inspection process kind of looks like for us. And so owner engagement media is always something that we see a ton of value out of, to be able to work with a lot of campuses or hospitals or office spaces. We want to invite the owners and clients and really interested parties into the process of building. It's something that they are continuing to invest in, and so we want to make sure that they feel the excitement around the project as much as we do. And so being able to show different perspectives has always been something that we're just excited to be able to present and show them kind of in that process. And so you can see kind of some of those examples here. That's always just been an immediate value that our clients just continue to give us good feedback on. And so then the last thing that I'm going to show you is kind of just this process of mapping and modeling our job site in a really different and unique way. And so what you're seeing here is a map, which is actually produced from some drone photos and then stitched together. So that's what the background of this image is, and what's overlaid on top of that would be a structural drawing. And that structural drawing just happens to be some information about piers and some structural items that we've either completed or we're working to complete in kind of a logistics type of capacity. And so what you're seeing here is really just a visual that helps provide so much more context when we're trying to communicate just different logistics and scheduling items to really communicate that to the people who are working on these projects out in the field. They're the ones that are out there, know where some of this material is laid down at and stored at. And so to have the context of what's going on site with the background of the map, which is created from the drone photos, on top of, or I should say combined with, the drawings, which a lot of us in the office interact and see with pretty frequently, to bring those two pieces of information together has been really a good tool for us to better understand what's going on site in context of what the drawings are needing to do. And so we've used this in a whole host of different ways as it relates to material laydown, scheduling different crews of people, 2-week look-aheads, owners' meetings to help describe kind of the challenges or things that are going on site. And so as you can just imagine, this is just a super helpful tool for us to help communicate to our clients and our subcontractors and really anyone involved on the team just what's going on site in context with the drawings specifically that a lot of people have interacted with. So that's one example. And then the second example that we wanted to show was really just this ability to model the site in a way that we haven't necessarily been able to do in an efficient manner before. And so earthwork, quantity control is just a really challenging thing to take on a project. To be able to kind of go out and field engineer and measure different stockpiles can be kind of a laborious process to go out and kind of put a surveying pole down and triangulate different measurements. And what we can do with the drone photos is eventually stitch together a model to then give us a 3-dimensional view of our site. And so the thing that comes in the most handy to measure in 3D would be stockpiles. And so to be able to kind of go and draw a markup around that and get a quick idea of how much material might be there is a really helpful part to us having this information on our job site. And so these are just a few examples of where we've seen just a lot of value in using these tools. And like I said, we'll do probably a future presentation to dive into a lot of those in more specifics for you to kind of get some more ideas behind it too. But those are just a few of the ones that we've seen, from inspections to overlays to owner engagement media to kind of a modeling concept of what you're kind of seeing here. So lastly here, just the last thing that we think that you should know about this technology is we think it's really here to stay. It's been something that we've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years here within our team and have seen the value that it's really helped our project teams produce. But there's always data that can help validate and show that as well. And so I just have a couple different graphs here and charts to kind of help explain that. This is a survey that Drone Deploy has done to kind of help explain what industries are starting to see the most value in utilizing this technology. And so construction consistently rises to the top of that list. And what's really exciting about that, and I think the reason that we have been the most excited about using this technology, is that it's impacting a lot of different workflows that we do on our job site. And so there isn't just one thing specifically that we're using this for, but really there's a lot of different parts and pieces to our operations that these tools have an impact on specifically. And so this is just kind of another chart to help explain. These are really the things and the workflows that we've seen these start to impact and really infiltrate in a really positive way to help us, again, communicate more efficiently to our project teams, to our clients, and really all these different areas. And so I think that's why it's been so impactful in our industry, is it's not just something specifically in an isolated workflow. It's really a whole host of workflows that we've seen this really help us out. And then lastly, this is always just something that I'm always curious to kind of track and see, is just this difference between in-house programs and outsourced contractors. I think as companies continue to choose to invest in technology, whether it's drone related or other different technologies out there, I think that really just shows the longevity of how much it's going to be around or how much it's going to stay. And so this was a research that was done by SkyLogic, which is just an incredible resource for you out there. If you have any people that ask questions about just the data or more information around the research of drones, SkyLogic is a great resource out there. And so I'd really just like this graph that kind of helped explain how companies are choosing to invest in this technology, and you can see a little above 2/3 is choosing to invest in that internally, which again, we've kind of gone down that path as well and have seen the value of doing that as well. So I think that's just something that can show that it is here to stay. It's something that companies should really consider looking at doing as a part of their own kind of workflow internally. And so with that being said, that's kind of the 5 things that we just wanted to go over quick to help get you guys excited about how this technology is really impacting our industry, and kind of show you some examples as well. But I don't do this often, I'm putting my personal email out there, but it is here for you to jot down, send us any questions, reach out and share ideas if there's things that you've seen as well that have been helpful. But we are just really excited to be able to interact with more people in this technology out in the industry. And so if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to connect with you and hear more about your program or answer any questions that you might have about starting your own. And so with that being said, thanks for giving us some time today. I hope you learned some things within this presentation, and we look forward to continuing through more topics down the road. If you have questions or other things that you'd like to hear more about, feel free to reach out. But thanks for joining us here today. We'll see you soon.